Vortenzek stood before the Dominion High Council, tendrils twitching with barely concealed excitement. The humans had been found again, this time on a distant outpost called Terranova. A lone colony, lightly defended, tucked away in the outer rim. The perfect target. Their expansion is erratic. Undisciplined, he declared. Their grasp of interstellar protocol? Non-existent. We strike now, wipe them out, and remind the lesser species who commands this galaxy. No one questioned him. Why would they? Humanity had not posed a real threat in over a century. Their earthbound wars had slowed their spread. Their technology lagged behind the Dominion's ancient archives. Every alien species that once feared them now treated them like a curiosity. Their sudden silence over the last few decades, interpreted as retreat. Vortenzek believed it was a sign of defeat. Scouting data confirmed the colony's size, small population, limited orbital defenses, rudimentary comms. A mere footnote in galactic affairs. The perfect place to assert dominance without drawing attention. The High Council approved the strike within the hour. But something was odd. A recon drone sent to orbit Terranova returned scrambled telemetry. No visuals. Just static and fragmented audio. One fragment repeated in looped bursts. You don't want this. You don't, Vortenzek scoffed. Desperation. The last mewlings of a defeated race, he sneered. His aides agreed, laughing in the cold, dry way only the Xeranth knew how. As warships prepped in low orbit, the soldiers on board grew increasingly confident. They discussed how quickly they'd crush this forgotten outpost. Some even placed bets. How long before the humans surrendered? Hours. Minutes. The invasion was branded Operation Swift Purge. Prideful. Clean. Efficient. Vortenzek reviewed old battle footage from the human Talcar skirmishes. Humans panicked under orbital bombardment, routed on the ground, their soldiers emotionally compromised. Predictable. Weak. He never questioned why none of those clips were recent. He never questioned why humanity hadn't retaliated in decades. He should have. But arrogance clouded reason. The Dominion had not lost a single conflict in 200 cycles. And these were just humans. One colony. One world. What could they possibly do? As the last ship in the invasion fleet left dock, Vortenzek watched the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere on that planet, a few thousand human beings carried on unaware that their end was en route. He looked at the fleet manifest again. 61 vessels, 5 heavy assault carriers, 8 legions of ground troops. More than enough. This will be educational, he said, voice low. The humans will be made example of. The aide beside him paused. And if they resist? Vortenzek chuckled. Then we'll remind them why silence doesn't equal strength. The stars outside shimmered as the fleet entered warp. A silent planet awaited. The mistake had already been made. Commander Elena Ward stood on the command deck, eyes fixed on the long-range display. Multiple blips had appeared along the colony's outer scan net, unregistered, synchronized, and moving with precision. Dominion ships. She didn't flinch. We hold position, she said calmly. The council panicked. Civilians requested evacuation. The request was denied. Terranova wasn't built for running. It was built for drawing in those arrogant enough to think humanity had gone quiet. Elena had studied Dominion tactics. They were cold, methodical, predictable. They believed humans were reactive, emotional, and disorganized. That belief was their weakness. Terranova had been established in silence for a reason. What appeared as a humble farming settlement was a strategic installation designed by Earth's most ruthless minds. The surface concealed weapons, camouflaged launch bays, and adaptive terrain systems. The colonists were ex-special forces, engineers, and survivalists. There were no children here by accident. Every person had a role in defense. As the incoming fleet approached, no alerts were broadcast. No dramatic alarms. Instead, command channels went dark. Local chatter ceased. Elena activated the blackout protocol. The entire colony seemed to vanish from the galaxy's sensors. Dominion Recon would report back emptiness. Vulnerability. Just as planned. She moved through the underground hub as defense systems activated silently. Motion-triggered turrets rotated. Underground batteries came online. Orbit-bound railguns extended from hidden craters. Elena didn't issue instructions, everything was pre-coded. This wasn't the colony's first drill. It was its only purpose. Old veterans strapped into suits built from reverse-engineered alien tech, reinforced with materials that made them immune to Dominion standard plasma. A grizzled mechanic grinned as he powered up a kinetic lance. They think we're settlers. God, I've missed this. Elena reviewed enemy trajectory. The Xeranth had committed over 60 ships. Overkill. Arrogance disguised as strategy. They thought numbers compensated for underestimation. Perfect. The quiet hum of readiness settled over Terra Nova. Civilians disappeared into reinforced shelters not because they were unprepared, but because they were weapons themselves. Educated in Dominion tactics since childhood, many of them had trained in Earth's off-the-books shadow programs. They weren't hiding. They were waiting. Elena keyed a short message into the automated broadcast relay, a single line, encoded in a Dominion dialect. Warning, proceed and perish. No reply came. Expected. The Dominion didn't recognize human warnings. They interpreted them as weakness. She smiled faintly. That flaw had cost other empires before. But the galaxy forgot. That's why Terra Nova existed, to remind them. A low beep echoed. The ships were entering orbital range. Elena stepped into the control core and locked down every system. Let them land, she said. On the surface, fields swayed in artificial wind. Nothing stirred. Nothing moved. To an enemy watching, it looked like peace. In truth, it was a loaded chamber. And Dominion arrogance had just pulled the trigger. Above, the first enemy vessels began their descent. Below, Terra Nova exhaled, silent, ready, and full of teeth. The Dominion fleet broke orbit with surgical precision. Target points mapped. Drop zones secured. Still, they received no resistance. No weapons fire. No warning signals. Just atmospheric silence. Vorten Zek interpreted it as submission. He was wrong. The moment the first wave of carriers breached lower orbit, half their navigation systems blinked out. A high-frequency pulse surged from the surface, scrambling telemetry and disrupting Dominion communications. Panic spread before they could even deploy ground troops. Orbital mines detonated with brutal precision, not with flashy plasma but with cold, kinetic violence. Entire vessels split in silence, their hulls buckled inward. Debris spiraled without fire, just metal and bone twisting in vacuum. Vorten Zek's flagship reeled as proximity alarms screamed across every deck. He tried to regain control, but the battlefield had shifted too quickly. Dominion formations fragmented. Command links failed. Orders vanished into static. Then came the second wave, human interceptors, small, fast, nearly invisible to standard sensors. They didn't engage in dogfights. They targeted engines, comms, and power relays. No wasted shots. No theatrics. Vorten Zek stared at the chaos unfolding. His fleet, meticulously designed, time-tested, was unraveling in minutes. On the surface, it got worse. Ground forces deployed into what appeared to be uninhabited terrain. But the moment boots touched soil, the land fought back. Camouflaged trenches opened under troop columns. Forests shifted. Hills concealed artillery that launched without warning, relying on old-fashioned shells that shredded plasma-resistant armor. Dominion soldiers trained for organized warfare. They met an enemy that used terrain like a weapon and silence like a strategy. Units vanished with no distress calls. Others turned on each other, confused by sensor echoes and jamming fields. The enemy was everywhere and invisible. From her underground command, Elena monitored everything. Enemy morale dropped by the hour. Patterns of panic were clear in troop movement. The Dominion had no psychological resilience. They had never fought a human enemy that didn't fight fair. She initiated Phase 2. Human teams emerged from terrain-integrated hatches, armed with magnetic spike launchers and adaptive armor. They didn't charge. They didn't shout. They hunted. Each shot had purpose. Each kill was silent, clean, intentional. Dominion squads vanished without ever firing a shot. Vortenzek received his final fleet report. Only 12 ships remained partially functional. All were cut off. His ground legions were unresponsive. The human message looped on emergency channels now, no longer scrambled. You shouldn't have come. He understood now. Terra Nova wasn't a colony. It was a test. A message. A trap crafted by minds that studied war not for conquest, but for vengeance. Humanity hadn't gone quiet because it was weak. It had evolved. He ordered full retreat, but the jump gate had already been destroyed. One final impact registered something large, fast, and launched from the planet's surface. It pierced his flagship's hull and kept going. The last thing Vortenzek saw was Earth's symbol, scorched into the metal casing of the projectile. No transmission. No final words. Just physics. And intent. He drifted alone through the void, wrapped in the silence of defeat. Scout tactician Relic, once part of the Dominion's elite observation corps, now floated in a crippled escape pod. Terra Nova flickered distantly behind him, no longer a dot on a map but a wound burned into memory. He had seen empires fall, but nothing like this. No war, no campaign, no extermination had ever unfolded so completely, so deliberately. His transmission was brief. Fragmented. Shaky. He didn't ask for reinforcements. He didn't beg for extraction. He sent one message to the Galactic Council. Do not provoke humanity. Do not approach their colonies. We thought them dormant. We were wrong. The response he received wasn't disbelief, it was silence. A ripple of fear passed through the galaxy's most powerful races. The Dominion had never suffered such a loss. 60 warships erased. Entire legions obliterated. A campaign ended before it began. Not through superior numbers, but through preparation. Through patience. Through psychology. Humanity had not disappeared. It had gone silent to evolve. To observe. To prepare not for diplomacy, but for deterrence. Each outpost, each colony, was now viewed not as expansion, but as bait. No one knew how many Terra Novas existed, or how many more traps were set beneath the skin of seemingly quiet planets. Back on Earth, the event was not broadcast. No parades. No official recognition. Just a brief entry added to a secure archive under one title, Operation Quiet Thorn, Success. A human historian would later explain it best. They assumed our silence was submission. What they failed to understand is that humanity doesn't retreat, we re-engineer. We went dark not because we feared war, but because we learned that survival means turning memory into strategy. He paused. And vengeance into infrastructure. Relic, broken and alone, was eventually rescued by a neutral vessel. He never returned to Dominion space. He refused. He spent the rest of his life warning others. Not about Earth's power, but its intent. Its memory. Its capacity to turn pain into patience. And the galaxy listened. Skirmishes near human territory ceased. Trade routes adjusted. Exploration vessels steered clear. Warnings were added to star maps in a dozen languages. Caution, human silence zone. What frightened them most wasn't the loss of ships or soldiers, it was the realization that humanity hadn't struck in anger. There were no taunts, no declarations, no boasts. Just precision, efficiency, and retreat into silence once more. No demand for surrender. No interest in conquest. Only one unspoken rule: don't come closer. The lesson echoed not in battles but in absence. The absence of war. Of defiance. Of contact. For the first time, the galaxy didn't know what humanity wanted. And that made them truly dangerous.